All right, I'm going.
All right.
I'm coming. See you.
See you.
Have fun.
Thank you. Hey. Come in, come in.
All right, I'm going.
All right.
I'm coming. See you.
See you.
Have fun.
Thank you. See you. Thank you. All right. So I'm using this computer here, but the camera looks a bit tilted. So I'm just going to fix it for a second. Yeah, let's see. I'll try to adjust it, and then if it doesn't work, maybe I'll. It's all right. It's all right now. All right. So, hi. Good evening. Thank you for coming. Kind of, a couple of minutes ago, I was here with Kartsön and someone else. I thought I might find myself completely alone tonight, so it's nice to see you. We have also a couple of people watching us on Zoom, and I guess that maybe some people will join us on YouTube. So we will form a small group of people that might meditate a little bit about the 4 immeasurables. So one of the people online is Adam. So we have Adam here and Adam at home. Hi. How are you, Adam?
Very
Long
good.
time no see.
Yes.
Yeah. So do you now live around here, or what's the goal?
I've always lived down the waters of it.
All right.
But now I'm helping people and that.
So you're kind of moving closer, or?
Yes.
Cool. All right. And we also have Jono, I think, joining us. So, good evening. I think that I've seen you before, I think, no? First time. Welcome. So, what is your name, if I may ask?
Stacy.
Stacy. Okay, welcome. So, I'm Kartsön, or Yaki. I've been here for the last 15 or 16 years. It sounds quite old, I think. Partially institutionalized, I'd say. And at the present, it's February. So what's normally happening in February when we're not experiencing COVID-19 is that I have a break because I don't like the summer. Not only I don't like the summer, I despise the summer. It's like the worst time of the year is February, particularly in Queensland. So I try to be away, normally in the Northern Hemisphere, where I enjoy either snow or cold or anything other than Queensland. But this year I'm here. And as it happens, at this point in time, we are running a little bit reduced capacity. So Venerable Chuki has just had an operation, and Tony is doing a retreat, and some other people are doing their own stuff. So we're kind of revamping our spiritual program and also looking at different things that we can offer. And this is where I came in and said, hey, maybe I can do a few sessions on meditating on the 4 immeasurables. So normally when I put my hand up for doing stuff, I try to cater them from what I like to do. So I start with kind of more of a self-centered attitude, self-cherishing attitude, and then I make my way through what would also be a good thing to be talking about and maybe to meditate on. And what I normally do is I look at my own meditation practice, and I think that, well, this is how I have been doing it so far. Maybe I can tweak a little bit of my meditation practice, or add a little bit of to it. And sometimes I use kind of those encounters that we have in order to rethink of some of the things that I've been thinking of or meditating on, and see, first of all, whether I can share it with others, and also maybe others can share what they're doing with me so that they can also inform my meditation practice. And also it gives me an opportunity just to kind of have a bit of freshness. Sometimes when you start to, when you stick into a certain routine, you get stuck into a certain routine, you're doing something, one thing day in and day out. Sometimes you kind of run out of ways of being creative. Now, it's not always you need to be creative, but sometimes when you're not creative in your spiritual practice and you're always doing the same thing, the novelty turns to run out. You become less inspired. You're doing the same thing again and again. It's when you don't find inspiration, then it's kind of sometimes you don't really reaching deep. You're just tapping the surface. So I'm saying that because part of the things that I've been doing for the last few years is following a meditation practice with Tai Situ Rinpoche, who is my ordination master. So he's teaching a 6 or 7 year Mahamudra training, in which we start off with developing some concentration skills, some stabilizing meditations, calm abiding meditations, and we're supposed to at some point be meditating on the nature of the mind. That will come later on. But currently we're still meditating on coming to understand our own mind, to develop stability, awareness of our own mind. And there is a certain pattern to those meditations. And this is what I've been doing for the last few years, and I find that it's really working for me. Not only it's working for me, also whatever we do here at Chenrezig Institute, I try to incorporate that also to what I do in other teachings and other meditation sessions, to turn my meditations to be something that is more kind of working out for me. So normally what I do in my meditation practice is I start my meditation practice with first of all, maybe 10 minutes of just making sure that my mind is centered, that my body is relaxed, that my mind is centered, that my mind is relaxed, that there is a certain attention that I develop in my mind. And then I try to generate refuge, to go for refuge and develop bodhicitta. But that takes me another 10 minutes because, to go for refuge, I meditate on a person's human rebirth and death and impermanence and what will occur to me in my future lifetimes. And then I try to use that as a motivation for going for refuge. And then also for developing bodhicitta. And then I go, and then after I do that, then I do some recitation of the 4 immeasurables. So my meditation on the 4 immeasurables is quite lame, to be honest. It's like I think that, I don't spend a lot of time meditating on the 4 immeasurables. And normally I think of certain things when I meditate on the 4 immeasurables. So when I was kind of thinking, what can I do for the Thursday evening teachings? Then I thought myself, well, let's investigate more the 4 immeasurables. And also let's meditate together on the 4 immeasurables. Maybe you guys will find it helpful, and hopefully I'll find it helpful, to just kind of think outside of my box in order to inform better my meditation on the 4 immeasurables. So that's what I thought of doing for this session. So we have the whole of February to do it. So this Thursday and the next 3 Thursday evenings, this is what I will continue with. And when I was trying to think of a certain structure to what I'm going to do in our 4 meetings, I tried to come up with a certain structure, and I have a beginning point, but I'm not sure that I have an end point, which is often what happens to me when I have to do something for myself, which is quite interesting because before, I've been here for, as I said, for 15 years working as an interpreter or translator. And I've been working with a few teachers and a few geshes, and of course, all of them are Tibetans. Now, Tibetans are not great in preparing classes. In that, I think that they're not used to creating a certain structure to classes. Like, you go to uni and you do a teaching degree and you are taught how to prepare classes and how to prepare all your materials and so forth. I think that that's not part of the teacher training of a common Tibetan teacher because they don't have teachers training. So you grow up in a monastery, right? You grow up in a monastery, you go to classes every day. You go to class, the teacher, sometimes it's just like one-on-one or two people in the same class. Sometimes you have a bunch of people in the same class, but it's not that in many of those classes you have desks and chairs and school bags and school meals that you get. You just go to class with a teacher. So you come in, you sit, you open, you need to read the text before, then the teacher, you have a conversation with the teacher. And sometimes the teaching is done through questions and answers, sometimes through the medium of debate, sometimes through raising doubts, through certain informal discussion, but also, of course, the teacher also will give you like a formal talk, I think. But each teacher has their own way of doing that, and it's not that there is the right way of teaching and the wrong way of teaching, right? It's not that formalized. You say formalized? Is that a word? Formulated. Teaching methodology. So I think that similarly when the geshes come here to a center like that and they start teaching, they pick up their own game. They're kind of, I think, draw from classes that they've been to before. They used to come into class and reading a text. So this is what they do. So before when I worked with some of our teachers, it sometimes it gave me a bit of discomfort, like, this anxious feeling like, let's prepare class, let's have a game plan, let's think of what we're going to do. And many of the geshes that I used to work with had like a couple of ideas, but they said, we just start talking and, open the text, open the book, start talking and things will flow. So my critical mind always thought that this is quite lame, or maybe lame is a strong word, but this is not the right way of doing it. But then now I find that I'm doing it pretty much the same. I have a certain idea of what I want to do, but I don't have like a very strict game plan. So let's start with that. I hope that I'll be able to cover in the next few weeks all the 4 immeasurables, but in previous courses that I've done, sometimes I found out that I was able to cover only half of it, what I had in mind. Let's see how it goes. I'm wondering if people at home hear me well, or maybe I need to put the mic. Actually, let me get the mic just a second. I can see the mic. There's a lot of cicadas. I wonder if I'm competing with the cicadas. So Erin says that she hears me perfectly. All right. Anyway, I got this, so I'll plug it in. All right. There it is. So what I thought of doing for our meeting is to do a combination of both a bit of talk and a bit of meditation, and also a bit of discussion if you guys have questions or comments or any point that you would like to bring up. Normally it's when a traditional teaching session begins, we begin it with going for refuge and developing bodhicitta as a way of correcting our motivation. But I thought of today maybe just, rather than beginning like that, then maybe we can begin with just a few minutes meditation together, if that's okay with you. I'll just maybe follow what I do in my meditation. It's not that that's the right way that's necessarily the only right way to meditate. Each one of us have our own, I think, routine or things that we are used to. But that's what works for me. So I thought of introducing it here and see whether it can also work for you. If it doesn't work for you, that's okay. You can use also your meditation routine. So I'm wondering if, I guess I know some of you, and I know that some of you have had some meditation, you're doing your own meditation, have done your own meditation session. Stacey, have you done some meditation before?
Yes.
All right, that's cool. Miguel, I guess that's sometimes on and off. So what I normally start with in my meditation is just a couple of minutes to scan my body, to make sure that my body is, first of all, completely comfortable. It is relaxed. It is not too relaxed, but it is totally at ease. That there's no sense of discomfort in my body. There's no tension in my muscle. It's not too tight, but also not slouch. I become aware of my body, and then I do a quick scan from toes to my crown, just to make sure that I pay attention to each part of the body and make sure that there's no discomfort in the body. And it's also a good way of just kind of bringing the attention back to the inside rather than outside. Then I do a round of 21 breaths, in which I divide each breath to 4 parts. So I breathe out, stop, or rather than saying stop, there is a transition between breathing out and breathing in, right? So breathing out, stopping, breathing in and stopping, that's one breath. I count a round of 21 breaths while not really forcing the breath or not stopping or breathing forcefully. It's just kind of allowing it to flow completely naturally, but I use that as a way of centering my mind. At least trying to calm the mind and follow a round of 21 breaths. Then when I correct my motivation, I think of, first of all, the potential of my own mind, how I can develop my own mind to be perfect, to free myself from all faults and to develop knowledge and qualities and so forth. And also I try to bring to my attention the fact that all of us have the same potential. Then, as I said, I think of having attained a precious human rebirth and death and impermanence, and that leads me to going for refuge and developing bodhicitta. That's how I start my meditation. And then as I said, I meditate on the 4 immeasurables. So I wanted just to maybe start with maybe 5 minutes meditation that we can do together just to quiet the mind. And then that will lead us to talking about the 4 immeasurables. Is that all right? Any questions or comments? All right, let's do it together then. So, when we meditate, we begin with, first of all, making sure that our body feels completely okay, completely at ease. And where I start is to, first of all, become aware of the body in general. And also try to get a sense of the location of the body in the room, where you're at in relation to the walls, to the ceiling. And the space that the body occupies in the room. And it's a quality of hardness or solidity to the body. We might call it the earth element. We can feel how this earth element is touching upon other earth elements, solidity and hardness. When we sense, for example, how a body, a mass is sitting on a cushion or a chair, on the floor or on a sofa. We might be sitting, we might be lying down. But there's a contact that we can first of all become aware of between our body and another surface. And as we become aware of the body, we can also make sure that our back is upright, not stiff, not rigid, not too tight, but it's not bending forward or backwards to the right or left. It's completely centered. Then in doing a quick scan from toes to the crown, we can first of all send our attention to the toes, to the back of the feet, to the ankles. And if there's any discomfort or tension, certain tightness, you can try to gently shuffle or just breathe out any sense of discomfort. And relax that place. Then go up to the shins, to the knees and the thighs. And again, if there's any discomfort or tension, then gently with your mind, lean into that place and breathe out all sense of discomfort. Then come up to the lower abdomen and the lower back. And normally there's a lot of tension that we hold in the stomach, the abdomen, the lower abdomen. So also just relax. Intentionally. And make sure that your chest is completely open. That your shoulders are level. Just let them drop. Normally we hold on, we hold a lot of tension in our shoulders, so we can just relax, let them drop, surrender to gravity. Also making sure that our palms and hands and arms are completely at ease, completely comfortable. And moving up to our face. If you can keep your mouth slightly open and the tip of the tongue is touching the upper palate. And pay attention to the jaws and the meeting point between the two jaws. And notice that normally there's a lot of tension that is accumulated throughout the day in our jaws. So again, with a deliberate intention, let it rest. And feel how if you let your jaws rest, your cheeks are also being relaxed, released and relaxed. You can also soften your eyes. And travel up to the forehead And also let it drop. So then, having made sure that the body is completely at ease, draw your attention to the breath. With a deep sense of attention, count a round of 21 breaths, breathing out, stopping, breathing in and stopping. While not being too rigid and stiff about the breathing process, just let it flow naturally, while trying to sustain a certain level of concentration. And don't be critical of yourself. If you find that your mind wanders off, it's okay. Just make a mental note and continue with your counting. And that in correcting our motivation, we can begin with reminding ourselves, or maybe noticing slightly, maybe for the first time, that in whatever we do, from early morning to late night, when we go to sleep, and even when we lie down in bed, whatever we do, directly or indirectly, we're doing that with that attitude, with that motivation, spoken or dormant, with that motivation of wanting to be happy, wanting to be well, wanting to be safe, wanting to experience some pleasure, physical pleasure or mental pleasure, wanting to find some satisfaction in meaning. We're also taking actions, any type of actions, because we want to avoid pain and discomfort, danger, a lack of security, mental pain, dissatisfaction, and so forth. So whatever we do, directly or indirectly, is trying to fulfill that. And this is something that is common to all of us. We might think that we are discrete individuals, completely separate from anyone else. There's something unique about ourselves that is not shared with anyone else. And yet, when you think of whatever we do, from early morning to late night, you can see how there's this invisible thread that ties all of us. My heart to your heart and to the hearts of everyone else. And it is that thread of wanting to be happy and wanting to avoid pain and suffering, wanting to be well to be satisfied, to be safe, and to avoid pain, discomfort, and so forth. And we have the ability to achieve just that, to develop a greater degree of happiness and well-being, to diminish a sense of discomfort and pain. We have the ability to do that because when we look at our mind, we can recognize how anger is not the nature of our mind, and attachment is not the nature of our mind. Confusion is not the nature of our mind. Jealousy is not the nature of our mind. Pride is not the nature of the mind. They do not exist within the nature of the mind inherently. Sometimes they arise, and often they are not there, like waves in the ocean. And since they are not an internal or integral part of the mind, an inherent part of the mind, if we change our circumstances, if we change the causes and conditions that give rise to anger, attachment, jealousy, pride, and so forth, we can diminish them. We can make them stop. If we create causes and conditions for developing positive states of mind, they can grow and increase. And we can do that because we have spiritual teachers to teach us how to do it. Here we follow the Buddhist teachings, a vast number of teachings and texts to teach us how to develop positive states of mind and to eliminate faults. We have teachers that explain that clearly to us. Also internally, we have wisdom that is supported by a body of a human being. We don't have any mental or physical disability that make it impossible for us to develop our minds. We have actually perfect circumstances, perfect situation that we can use in order to develop our own mind to an utmost extent. And we're in a unique disposition here because not many have such conditions that make it possible for them to develop their minds. Not many have the interest to do so. And even if people have the wish to develop their mind, often they don't encounter teachings or teachers that can clearly teach them how to do so. So this is not our situation. We have everything that can be put to use for developing our mind. And we don't have a lot of time to do it because death is certain and the time of death is uncertain. We're getting closer and closer to the moment of death. Each year that goes by, each month that goes by, day, hour, minute, second, are getting us closer and closer to the moment of death. And at the end, the only thing that we can take with us from this life to the next are the actions that we have done in this and previous lives, and whatever mental habits we have developed in this and in our previous lives. Our body will be left behind, our friends and relatives will be left behind. All the things that we've accumulated in our life that hold some sentimental value for us, none of them will continue with us beyond death. All of them will be completely cast aside like garbage. So then if future lifetimes do exist, my hope is to avoid a miserable rebirth, to attain a good rebirth, in a good circumstance, to be able to again be born as a human being, to develop my mind, to encounter spiritual teachers, to encounter the Dhamma, to have conducive conditions, to avoid miserable states of existence in which not only I will be tormented by pain and confusion and mental anguish, but also I will have no ability to develop my mind. So this is my goal, not to fall into such a miserable state of existence. And in order to do that, I rely upon, first of all, the Buddha, the one who has done the work himself and have left teachings, teaching us how to do it ourselves. So I trust the Buddha. I also trust the Dhamma that the Buddha taught. And I trust that if I develop the Dhamma in my own mind, bringing about cessations of the causes of suffering, cessation of ignorance, cessation of attachment, cessation of anger, of jealousy and pride and so forth. If I develop virtues, any positive state of mind that I develop in my own mind, it will protect me from suffering, from future suffering. And this is my true refuge: protection from suffering, cessation of afflictions. And also I have a community of teachers or Dhamma friends that can assist me in showing me the path, the way for developing my mind. And I do that with the recognition that I can achieve the state of Buddhahood so that I'll be of maximum benefit to all other living beings that have been so kind to me since time without beginning and up until now. I have an ability to repay their kindness. The best way to repay the kindness is for me to become Buddha, to teach them the way that they themselves can harness the potential of their own mind, to fully develop the potential of their own mind. So then with that, I can say in English the verse for going for refuge. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the highest assembly. By the accumulations I gather through generosity and so forth, I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the highest assembly. By the accumulations I gather through generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to be of benefit to all sentient beings. To the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the highest assembly, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened. By the accumulations I gather through generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. So this is the way that I start every meditation that I do. So you can maybe slowly come out from your meditation. And I think that one thing that we can recognize is that we have good meditation sessions and bad meditation sessions. Bad meditation sessions meaning that our mind is totally all over the place. You know, I have days in which I felt that my meditation was kind of reaching, kind of hitting the mark. This is what I want to do in my meditations. And then days in which I feel that I can't even sit still for 10 seconds. My mind gets totally edgy all the time, agitated. It happens. So, but if we develop some consistency in our meditation, I think that if we try to stick to a certain routine, then that acts as a baseline for developing, I think, better and better stability in our meditation. But there are good days and also days in which our meditation doesn't work that well for us. But anyway, this is how I begin my meditation session, every meditation session that I do. And then I say the formula for the 4 immeasurables. So what are the 4 immeasurables? Which, this is what I wanted to talk about in the next 4 sessions. So the 4 immeasurables. It's beginning with saying, may all sentient beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. Thus, the first immeasurable, which is called immeasurable love, immeasurable loving kindness. Then the second one, may all sentient beings be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. That is called immeasurable compassion, right? Wishing sentient beings to be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. Then the third immeasurable is called immeasurable joy. May all sentient beings never be separated from soulless bliss or sorrowless happiness. That's immeasurable joy. And the fourth one is immeasurable equanimity. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, being free from attachment and anger, holding some as close to oneself and or others as distance from oneself. I normally say it in Tibetan, but so kind of sometimes my English does not flow when I say that. But these are the 4 immeasurables. So first of all, these 4 immeasurables in general are a practice that is common to all Buddhist traditions. We normally use them in a practice or study of Tibetan Buddhism with a Mahayana flavor, a strong Mahayana flavor. But that's a basic practice that is common to all Buddhist traditions. Not only it is common to all Buddhist traditions, you can say that also these 4 immeasurables are found in other traditions as well. Maybe they are not called the 4 immeasurables, but certainly in, first of all, other Indian traditions, you have the practices of love and compassion and so forth, but also the traditions that are closer to us, closer to home. I think that most of us were brought up in I wouldn't say in a Christian background or with a Jewish background necessarily, but in more of a cultural background in which the values and the language and the ideas that we grew up with in our school system, in our family system, in the holidays that we celebrate, many of them are affected by, I think, Abrahamic traditions or religions, which also speak about love and compassion and so forth. Maybe not exactly in the way that they're found in the Buddhist tradition, but still those practices are also found in other traditions of loving kindness and compassion and a sense of equanimity to others. Not boundless equanimity, that is not necessarily boundless equanimity in the way that you find in the Buddhist tradition, but some sense of equanimity to others. So in the Buddhist language, they're called the 4 immeasurables. They're also sometimes called the 4 abodes of Brahma, the 4 Brahma viharas. They're called the 4 abodes of Brahma because when we think of the Buddha, the original Buddha Shakyamuni, growing up obviously in India, at a time in which India has enjoyed a great richness of spiritual traditions. The Buddha himself was born into a Hindu tradition. Now, when we say a Hindu tradition, there's that idea that Hinduism is like one formal or strict religion, but actually there are many Hindu traditions, Hindu traditions that believe in different gods and different deities. Some of them emphasize different gods, different deities. Some of them actually are quite contradictory to each other, and all of them are packed into this tradition that is called Hinduism. So this is the environment that the Buddha was born into. There was a great discussion, great exchange between different Hindu traditions that promoted different forms of meditation and philosophies that were all aiming at finding, or most of them were aiming at finding a sense of liberation, enlightenment. And although enlightenment and liberation are explained in different ways and promoting sometimes different methods, there's still some commonalities to the ideas of what brings about a sense of liberation and what is enlightenment. But anyway, it is, the story goes, and I think that is, as far as I remember, this is the story. It says that one day a Brahmin, someone that was following the Brahmic tradition approach to Buddha, and he asked him about a method from being born in the heaven of Brahma, the pure realm of Brahma. And the Buddha said that the best way to do it is to cultivate love, a sense of genuine concern for other sentient beings, for other living beings. Not only for other living beings, also a sense of concern for oneself, and a sense of concern for others. And it's an equal sense of concern for oneself and others. And that is the best method for being born in a Brahma realm. So when you look at this meditation of the four immeasurables, developing immeasurable love to sentient beings, developing immeasurable compassion, equanimity, joy, all of them are concerned with the welfare of others. So they're called in general the four Brahma viharas, or the four Brahma abodes, because they do bring about the sense of completeness and happiness. So at least you can use them in order to, not only in a Buddhist context, but also in other traditions, to develop those positive causes for being born in better states of existence. But I think that for us, when we approach the Buddhist tradition, I think that for most of us, our starting point is not thinking necessarily what will occur to us in our future life, or what will be the best method for us to attain the state of liberation. I think that for most of us, when we encounter the Buddhist tradition, we begin with thinking of, how can I make this lifetime better? How can I make my mind work better? How can I improve my mind to develop to be a better person? To have less anxiety, to be less uptight, to be less angry, to have a lessened sense of pride, to be less jealous. How can I communicate with others in a more open way, to be more caring for others? This is, I think, that's the beginning point for most of us. We have sometimes kind of this, we don't feel sometimes quite right about what's going on inside, and we're trying to improve our mind. Of course, not all of us begin exactly in the same with the same disposition or with the same aspiration or affiliation. But I think that in general, what I find in myself and also in many other Dharma friends is that our beginning point is looking at this life and wanting to really make a change in this life, just to be to make our mind better, to be a better person. So then if we happen to come across the Buddhist tradition, we start to go to teachings, we start reading books, and then we discovered that actually there are things that we can do with our mind. We can take it way better, more advanced than just looking at what we can achieve in this lifetime. There's something that we can also do with respect to future lifetimes. But then before we get to that point, for many of us, including myself, we start thinking of whether future lifetimes exist. Is it that this lifetime is the only lifetime that matters? Is it that we live only once? Or is there a chance that after this life, after death, we will go on and take another rebirth? It's not easy to come down definitely on a conclusion, isn't it? Is it? That when we start to think about it, and for most of us, it's not our spiritual disposition to think that future lifetimes exist. So this is not our, cultural or religious background. I think that for some of us, naturally, I've met many people that naturally from young age thought that future lifetimes exist, or that past lifetimes exist, that this lifetime is not the only lifetime that we have. Some people are naturally prone to thinking about it in this way, but this is not the way that I personally started. And I think that probably for some of you, or maybe many of you, you also do not start necessarily with that instinctual thought that future lifetimes do exist. So then over the years, I started to keep a mind that is more and more open to thinking about future lifetimes, whether future lifetimes exist. It's quite funny. And now I've been a monk. I've been a monk for a few years. I've been involved with the Buddhist tradition for more than 20 years. So you would say that I should have reached an absolute conclusion that future lifetimes exist. No, I should be absolutely certain that future lifetimes exist. Well, I do trust that they exist, but still it's not to the point where it's like, the sun rises in the morning, it sets at night, and it's exactly on the same level as my trust in future lifetimes. Maybe you could say that I have 98% certainty that future lifetimes exist, and I still keep a couple of percent free for entertaining a doubt. It's not like I keep it for free, it's like naturally happening. This thought that, but what if future lifetimes do not exist? Which I think that is something that sometimes happens to many of us. It's like you get a certain explanation about a situation, it all makes sense, you have all the lines and all the arguments and reasons lined up, it makes sense to you, but then you think that, yeah, but what if it's not true? It could be completely illogical to think about it like that, but what if it's not true? Even though you've had the reasons and they feel right, you still keep in mind that it's kind of uncertain, it's too pointed with respect to the conclusion. It happens to me sometimes with thinking about future lifetime, with thinking about what will occur to me after this life. Although I can have all the arguments that I've had and that I have heard about and I've thought of so far, I can have all of them lined up in my mind. Still, it's difficult sometimes to reach an absolute conviction. Do you find does it work for you in the same way? So anyway, now we start thinking of future lifetimes, and then we start thinking of what will occur to me in my future lifetime. Will it be a miserable state of rebirth? Will it be a pleasant state of existence? And then it becomes even more complicated, because when you then start to look at the traditional way of speaking about future lifetimes, and the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, we're being introduced to the Tibetan Buddhist tradition with lamas that follow, for example, the writings of Lama Tsongkhapa and Bapongka Rinpoche that, of course, rely upon teachings of the Buddha and have a very graphic description of realms of existence, which we do not see. When you look at the writings of Lama Tsongkhapa or Bapongka Rinpoche about the hells and the Preta realms and so forth, everything is so graphic, like an anime movie, and it's very gore, People are being killed, beings are being killed and slashed and cut into pieces and being boiled and so forth. It's so out there that it's hard to believe that it is exactly like that. If you're born into the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, and this is what you get from day one, this is your cultural backdrop. It's easy. It's easier. For me, it's harder. But then, as I say, over time, I keep an open mind, keep listening to teaching, keep thinking about them. I see that other teachings are true, ring true, they feel right to me. So then I keep an open mind to thinking of things that I cannot verify at the moment, cannot directly see in the moment, but also I can't say definitely that they do not exist like that. Anyway, still work in progress. But there are things that I can see, what happens, for example, how it'd be like to be born as an animal, how it'd be like to be born as a pig, how it'd be like to be born as a fish, how it'd be like to be born as an insect, how it'd be like to be born into an animal that is incarcerated in the meat industry, industrial farming, how it'd be like to be born in an African savanna. There are so many things that you can find on YouTube, different clips of the situation of animals, and you try to think, I try to think of how it'd be like to have the mind of this animal, completely fearful all the time. And also with that confused state of mind, or dull state of mind, that cannot really think of what can I do in order to break free from that situation. So then, I'm saying that because we, at least when I look at the way that I'm approaching the teaching, all the time I can extend my mind to think of not only this life, but future lifetimes as well. What will occur to me in my future lifetimes? And how can I develop some states of mind that will, or positive states of mind, a better insight into reality that will help me to avoid such miserable states of existence. And then even further than that, how can I develop my mind in order to develop a better mental health, greater degree of mental happiness and well-being, not only in this life, but also in future lifetimes? How will I be able to finally attain the state of liberation, and even more than that, to develop my mind to be completely perfect, like the mind of a Buddha, to be free from all faults, all negative emotions, all confusion, all distortions of reality, all ignorance, any lack of knowledge? How can I develop perfect knowledge, complete understanding of reality to its most subtle level, and to develop boundless compassion and ethics and generosity and patience and loving kindness and sense of empathy to others? So it is all possible if we develop a better understanding of our mind. So then when we begin with looking at our own mind, when you start to look at Buddhist psychology or Buddhist teachings on mind training, you come across a description of so many different states of mind that operate in a mind stream every day. Our mind changes all the time, and we constantly experience different states of mind. We develop a better awareness, better attention of our own mind, and we start to detect mental tendencies. How, for example, on a daily basis, there are so many occasions of anger or hostility or annoyance. They start with often a sense of discomfort. We feel either physical discomfort about a certain situation or mental discomfort. And that discomfort increases. It becomes more acute. It magnifies. Then anger arises and we react to a certain situation. We attack or we retreat. Our mind kind of yells internally, and then we detach ourselves from a certain situation, or we lash out at something. We try to change a situation. We try to fix a situation. We try to, get back at others, or we try to withdraw from others in order to improve a situation. Or in so many other points along the day, we find that there's something that we're yearning for, something that we want, something that we aspire for, something that we desire, something that we want. And there's that sense of almost like being thirsty, either with acute, this acute pain of being thirsty, wanting to get something, or just kind of this something that is found at the very back of our mind that creates that sense of discomfort that tells us that if only we get the thing that we wish for, that will give us the happiness or the pleasure that we seek. So our mind goes through different phases throughout the day. Sometimes anger and hostility are there, and sometimes passion and desire are there, sometimes jealousy, and sometimes pride, and sometimes that sense of competition, wanting to outdo other people. Sometimes we try to hide our own faults. Sometimes we try to feign good qualities. And also, sometimes we have those moments of insight into reality. Sometimes we have moments of closeness to others, sense of empathy to others, generosity, holding certain sets of ethics. We sometimes have a sense of compassion and loving kindness to others. So I might constantly go through all those different events throughout the day. But we're often not really aware of that. We go through the motions through a day without really being aware of what's happening to our mind. And we often find that although we had no intention to get angry with others, we ended up getting angry at others. Not only getting angry, but also we sometimes find ourselves behaving in ways that we would never want to know. We never thought that we would be able to to act. Sometimes we say horrible things to people that are close to our hard. Sometimes we quarrel with with people at home, with peers at work, with friends and so forth. Or we watch the telly, we watch the internet. There's a sense of discomfort that arises in our mind, and we think that I should have avoided that state. But once again, I ended up in a state in which my mind was unhappy. So it happens to us almost every day. So then when we start to look at what makes the mind unhappy, what are the causes for mental unhappiness? At the very root, first of all, ignorance, of course, ignorance or misunderstanding with respect to reality, and even more so, a distortion of reality. And on that basis, often we have occasions of anger, hostility, aversion, spite, wrath, or desire, sense of dissatisfaction, pride, jealousy, and so forth. And these states of mind are just uncomfortable. They're not only unhealthy, they're not, of course they're unhealthy, but we can start to recognize how they don't feel comfortable. I mean, we all know that anger is not a comfortable state of mind. If we had any option of deciding, whether we could, if there's an option of having an operation in which we would be able to completely amputate anger, to take it out, like lifting something from our mind and chucking it out to the garbage, all of us would have done it. I mean, anger, we know that it's not a kind of happy state of mind. It's quite a painful state of mind. We sometimes kind of feel that anger is justified, and we might come up with reasons why in certain situations anger is justified. But still, when we look at the bare feeling, that exact feeling, the experience of being angry, of having that state of mind that is unable to bear a certain situation, we know that it's a painful experience. It's not a happy state of mind, it is a painful state of mind. And also with jealousy, it is exactly the same. Jealousy is not a happy state of mind, it is a painful state of mind. There's something that another person has, and it makes you unhappy that they have it. You think that they do not deserve it. Actually, I'm the person that should have it. Sometimes it's not that acute, it's not that stated, but this is what jealousy is. It's like looking at something that another person has and thinking that may it be mine. That person does not deserve it. It should be mine. So that's not a happy state of mind. And also pride is not a happy state of mind. When you look at, with the sense of pride, when you look at people around you and you think that I'm better than them, I have better quality, they're inferior to me. Maybe it's hard to identify with it as being a painful state of mind, but it's a disquieting state of mind, because it's a state of mind in which there's a barrier that is created between you and others. It's a state of mind in which you're unable to feel a sense of closeness to others. There's a sense of detachment from others in which you think that I'm better than them. And again, sometimes it's not very acute, sometimes it's not a very powerful state of mind, but it creates a sense of disparity, a sense of, you find yourself removed from others, being unable to relate to them because you think that you're better than them. So it's not an open and peaceful state of mind. With attachment, it's quite difficult to think of attachment as being a painful state of mind, because attachment comes with a certain disguise. It tells us that it's good for us, right? It's good for us, it's going to take care of us, it's going to give us what we want. It tells us that something out there is good for us, and only if we get that thing, it will make us happy. So it seems like the appearance that our mind gets is that it's like attachment is a friend. It tells us what is good for us. But still, when you think of the different things that we desire, the different things that we wish for, which becomes exaggerated in our mind, attachment create that displays as if happiness is out there in the things that we desire, not inside in the mind, but in the things that we desire, it comes with, again, with a mind that is not peaceful. There's a certain mental disturbance. So sometimes it's difficult to identify that with pain. But when you think about just being thirsty, when attachment becomes so deep, so strong, it's almost like being thirsty, to the point in which even if you were to drink an ocean of water, you would still be thirsty. Not always, not with all forms of attachment, it's like that. But there's a sense of mental disquiet. It's not settled, the mind is not settled, it's not peaceful, it's not relaxed. It's still agitated. So this is the point in which, first of all, we use the 4 immeasurables in order to bring about a greater balance to the mind. But the 4 immeasurables work in a particular way. Because in general, when we get angry or when we develop attachment, we can develop anger and attachment to different things, right? So we can be attached to a certain person, but we can also be attached to food. We can be attached to money. We can be attached to our houses. We can have an attachment to a sense of reputation, to enjoyments and so forth. And likewise, when we get angry with other people, but we can also get angry with things that are not people. We can get angry at sources of suffering, what causes us pain. We can get angry with a certain situation. We could get angry with, things out there, which for us, we think are the sources for our own suffering. So although there are many different reasons or many different causes, many different ways for getting angry, developing attachment and so forth, with the 4 immeasurables, we deal with other living beings, which in certain situations can cause a certain sense of discomfort or pain in our mind. So rather than developing anger or still holding on to anger and hostility and aversion, aggression, or attachment, sense of clinging to others, we meditate. We use the meditation on the 4 immeasurables in order to, first of all, decrease anger and attachment with respect to others. We use the meditation on the 4 immeasurables to develop a greater sense of equanimity with respect to others. And we use equanimity as a basis for developing empathy, for developing loving kindness, for developing compassion with respect to others. So that's the beginning. That's the, I think, the most fundamental level or basic level of using the meditation on the 4 immeasurables to balance out a mind that is unbalanced. Right? So mind is unbalanced. It's unbalanced with respect to the people around us. There's some people that we like and people that we dislike. When we come across someone that we dislike, there's the sense of discomfort that arises in our mind. Sometimes there's a sense of anger and hostility that arises in our mind, but sometimes it's just a sense of discomfort, like the person is making me feel uncomfortable, I just want to go away. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to think about the person with a sense of malice, with an intention to harm. Sometimes you just think that I don't like that person, I just want to go away. Or there's a certain person that you're very attached to. And you think that if I'm separated from that person, I'm not going to be able to be happy. That person is the source for my happiness in this life. If only I can remain with that person for the rest of my life, I will be able to live a happy life. And then we often also see that the situation in our relationship change. There's a person that we have felt close to before, but now we dislike that person. There's a person that we felt sense of dislike to that person, or we were angry with that person, we hated that person in an early phase of our life, but now we feel a sense of connection to them. We even like them. Maybe they became a good friend of ours. So those relationships change, but the mind is still kind of affected by attachment to some and aversion to others. And in between, there are also many other people that we neglect, or that we feel a sense of indifference with respect to. We don't necessarily feel very close to them, but also we don't dislike them. And they also change. Those people that we feel indifferent to sometimes become a good friends. They can become a good friends, and sometimes they become people that we dislike. So there's this kind of great soup of people, and we stir that soup with a big spoon, and they kind of change positions. Sometimes they are close ones, sometimes we dislike those people, sometimes we become indifferent to them. In different phases of our life, we see that also those situations change. Sometimes it's quite interesting. I grew up in Israel, and I still have a small group of high school friends and people from my early 20s that I feel very close to. And the only reason that feel very close to those people now is that because we have some shared history, that we have some good time together, and there was, with some of them it was like times of growing up and kind of feeling that teenage angst and being very excited and self-discovering, going out to parties, and then sharing a flat with some friends and going out for parties, and living by yourself, and slightly or moving away from your family and from your parents and so forth, and finding out that kind of you can stand on your feet and be independent and so forth, and share those experiences with others. So I have that shared history with those people from my late teens or early 20s. And then whenever I go home, we try to still meet, at least go out once. And it's almost every time, at every end of meetings, kind of I think of the things that connect us now, and I think that actually have very little in common with those people. The only thing that keep us together is shared history. But other than that, I feel actually quite disconnected from them, as if I've moved on in one direction and they moved on in another direction. So I'm saying that because it's like we were very close once upon a time, and now there's a sense of disconnectedness. It sounds as I feel when I meet them. It's like we are no longer sharing the same values, the same stories, the same realities, the same day-to-day way of life. So we change those relationships. Those relationships change, throughout our life. So long as our mind is affected constantly by anger, attachment, indifference, anger, attachment, indifference. So we see that that's happening on a daily basis. For that long, there will be that sense of mental imbalance. So one benefit of meditating on the four immeasurables is to begin with balancing out that mental imbalance. Rather than holding some as close to ourselves and others as distant from us, we can develop a sense of, first of all, equanimity, which is also called impartiality with respect to others. So with the four immeasurables, we say, may all sentient beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they enjoy soulless bliss. And at the end, we say, may all of them abide in equanimity, free of attachment to some and aversion to others, being close to some and far from others. But actually, I think that when we start to put it into practice, we begin with the last immeasurable, which is immeasurable equanimity. First of all, we want to create this equal sense of care for others. And the word equanimity sometimes is misleading. We use the word equanimity or impartiality. And it might seem as if kind of we want to create that sense of even-mindedness with respect to others that sometimes can be taken to be the sense of equal lack of care with respect to others. Like, I don't want to have a sense of attachment to others. I want to stop caring for others exactly in the same way. If they're happy, it's not my concern. If they suffer, it's not my concern. I'm equal with respect to all. But this is not the meaning of equanimity. No, this is not the intended meaning of impartiality. It's not that we want to become cold and numb with respect to others. We want to develop that even-mindedness with respect to others, in which a mind is not affected by attachment to some and aversion to others. We want to have an equal sense of care for others. If we love someone, we want to have an equal sense of care and love to everyone. If we avoid disliking someone, we want to avoid disliking everyone exactly in the same way. So with the four immeasurables, at least the way that I begin my meditation on the four immeasurables is to meditate on immeasurable equanimity. That's the very foundation for immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, and immeasurable joy. So how then do we think of immeasurable equanimity? What are the reasons that we use in order to think of immeasurable equanimity? Well, first of all, when we think of, as I studied in the early meditation that we all went through, when I start in meditation, I remind myself that all of us are the same in seeking happiness and wanting to avoid suffering. So, you come across people that have, first of all, look very different to the way that you look. It's like, when I grew up, for example, in Israel, society was very, Middle Eastern, Caucasian society. It was very rare to come across someone that had that came from an African background or Asian background. It was almost like when you saw an Asian person walking in the street, everyone thought of him if the person is being Chinese. No, we had no idea that. It's not that we had no idea. We kind of, the exposure to Korean, Japanese, Sri Lankan, Thai, Burmese, Laos, Cambodia was so low in Israel that for us, all of them looked pretty much the same. And the same thing was with people that had a darker skin complexion. All of them seemed to be the same. And there was that sense of, difference. They look to us different to us. There's a Chinese person, an African person in the street. They probably think differently, or they see things in a different way. There's a sense of, I think that when I grew up, there was that sense of, we don't think in it. We are different people. We don't think in the same way. Something can also happen with respect to different genders, different races. People that live in other parts of the world, people that live in India and South America, and people that live in America and they support Trump or they support Biden, people that live in Australia that support Scott Morrison or support someone else. There's a sense that sometimes people are so different to me that I don't really care about what's happening to them. There's a sense of being completely different to me that whatever they undergo doesn't really affect me. It's not related to me. So we start with equanimity, with recognizing that although they might look very different to you, they might seem to be living sometimes on a completely different planet than you, still, they're very, very deeply inside, they have the same wish, even if it's not stated like that. Whatever I do and whatever they do are based on that wish to be protected, to be safe, to feel physical comfort, to feel protected physically, to find yourself in a comfortable physical situation surrounded by people that we love, good facilities or comfortable facilities, and also mentally to feel happy, to be satisfied, to have a certain meaning in our life. We try to put meaning into our life in different ways, but still the wish to do that is the same for all of us. So then when you think of, wherever you are, whatever you do, going up to the shops, going out to the post office, driving your car, driving to the bank, interacting with people in your place of work, even if someone rubs you the wrong way, or even if someone, you come across someone that you have no idea of the background, there's still something that connects you and them, which is the basic wish to be happy and to avoid suffering. So this is the first thing that we use in order to think of equanimity. I'm not different to them. There's nothing special about me. There's nothing that disconnects me from that person, because that invisible thread, invisible cord that is like connecting my heart to their heart, my mind to their mind, which has those vibrations of wanting to be happy and wanting to avoid suffering. It's all vibrating throughout the mind, even if it's unstated in words, or even if it's stated in words that you don't understand in different languages. This is what's common to all of us. I want to be happy. I want to be safe. I want to be protected. I want to be satisfied. I want to feel comfortable. I want to be mentally well. I want to not have anger and attachment and pride. I want to be a good person. All these are things that are vibrating throughout the mind. And from that point of view, we can see the equality between all of us. So this is where we begin. So then, more than that, if you think of then, since all of us want to be happy, and none of us wants to experience suffering and pain and so forth, if there's an ability, if you have an ability to do something for the sake of others, where will you begin? Will you begin only with the people that are close to your heart, people that you like, and you neglect everyone else? Or will you try to develop a sense of impartiality, to treat others in exactly the same way? So His Honesty the Dalai Lama spoke about it before. And that's a kind of great thing to include in our meditation on equanimity, so that we can imagine a situation, for example, where you go into hospital, you go into a certain ward, and you have medicine in your hand that can protect others. There are 10 sick people lying in bed in hospital, and you have medicine in your hand that can provide cure or treatment for any one of those patients. How would it feel like, for example, to provide that medicine only to one person? That's the person that is close to your heart. You're going to neglect everyone else that are suffering exactly in the same way. You're going to neglect them because they're not your brother, they're not your sister, they're not your close friends, they're not your school friend, they're not someone that you work with, they're not someone that that you belong to the same organization, to the same football club, to the same squad, swimming squad. You're going to give it only to the people that you know, only to the people that you care about, and you're going to neglect the others. If you try to imagine that situation, if all of them are looking at you, if all of them are thinking that you can help them, but you're going to give that medicine only to one person, it doesn't feel right, does it? It feels actually quite painful. Now, if you had to make that choice, it's almost like an unbearable choice. It comes with a sense of discomfort, with a sense of guilt. That's not the right thing to do. If you can give medicine to others, you should give that equally to everyone else, regardless of whether they're close to your heart or not. And the same thing is that suppose that you meet someone that you meet a beggar. They're asking you meet 10 beggars. They're asking you for money. Would it be right to give food or to give money just to one of them because that's the beggar that you like? You don't know the others, or you don't like the others. You like only one beggar out of them. Is it right? Does it feel right to have a preference, to be able to care only for one person? Doesn't feel right, does it? So then when you start to think of developing that sense of equanimity to others, impartiality to others, it starts feeling that preference, that those preferences that we hold, that we entertain in our mind, are not always correct or just or right. If we can care for others, why wouldn't we care for others? Why is it reasonable to care only for a small group of people or a small group of beings and not care for everyone in exactly the same way? I mean, here it becomes more complicated because we are so bound by a social construct. For example, it almost feels like if you were to care for everyone exactly in the same way that you were to care for your family members, it would be unfair. You'd be cold-hearted with respect to your family members because you should have a preference, right? You should like your family members more than others. You should protect your family members more than you protect others. You should help your family members more than you help others. But then imagine a situation, if we can think about it from the opposite way, imagine a situation where you would care for your family members, you would help your family members, but just as well, to exactly the same degree, you would be able to care for others. Would it take anything away from caring for your family members? Does it have to come at the expense of your family members? Does it make you does it make you a less a good person if you were to care for others exactly in the same way that you were to care for your family members? I mean, if we had that capacity to care for others exactly in the same way that we care for others, to begin with, how great it would be, but also our mind would be so much happier. And when we have good interactions, when we feel that we are valuable in our care for our family members, that we're actually helping them, supporting them in whatever way we can, it brings about this good and bonding connection between ourselves and our family members. So how great it would be if we could have exactly the same with more people, exactly the same situation, not having a preference, but actually being able to create the same kind of close-heartedness with respect to others. So it actually makes sense. It is a reasonable approach. When you think about it in terms of reasons, it's not that it is something that is completely illogical thing to do. It's actually a sensible thing to do, to think that if I feel closer to others and then I'll be able to help them in a better way, my mind will be made so much more happy, so much closer to others. Anyway, since I'm running out of time and I haven't even got halfway through to equanimity, so I'm wondering if you have any questions, people here or people at home, if you have any questions or comments. John?
You've presented equanimity as the starting point.
Yeah.
Is that common amongst various commentaries and teachings and the like that equanimity starts rather than love?
Well, that's
the order that they're presented.
The order that they are presented are indeed immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy, and then immeasurable equanimity. And when we meditate on that, we think may all sentient beings, for example, have happiness. How wonderful if all of them would have happiness. I will make them be happy. May all sentient beings be free from suffering. How wonderful if they would be free from suffering. I will make them be free from suffering, and so forth. And the last one, how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings would have equanimity. I will make them become more equanimous. But then when we think of how does it happen actually in our stages of practice, in order to know from a Mahayana perspective, in order to develop great compassion and great loving kindness to others, first of all, we need to begin with equanimity. So in general, since the teachings on the four immeasurables are common to all Buddhist traditions, they are presented, I think, in that way. This is the formula that we use.
As equanimity as the start.
No, the formula that we use is love and compassion and so
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah.
But then, in terms of the Mahayana tradition, when we aspire to develop great compassion, that is not only seeing everyone with a same sense of compassion, but it's also the one that is taking the responsibility for liberating others from suffering. The first stage for that is equanimity. This is where we begin to create the ground for that. So I think that although it might not be too common to present it like that, in some teachings you do find that you begin with equanimity. So, it's not that I've started it as like, this is my approach to this meditation. Actually, I did hear kind of that in teachings before that, in practicality, when you meditate on the 4 immeasurables, you can begin with meditating on immeasurable equanimity.
Could I?
Yes, you can, to begin.
Oh, thank you. A different view towards equanimity to how you described it. In that, by example there, when you talked about your friends from a long time ago,
Yeah.
and there's been a developed disconnectedness between yourselves because it's going different routes and the like, which presents as a separation and division between people.
Mm-hmm.
And likewise, when you talk about the indifference to people, the attached to people, and being averse to people as the 3 poisons, effectively, that is also talking about a division between a friend and an enemy sort of thing at the start.
Yeah.
And as an alternate, or as a different view towards equanimity, as to have no friends, have no enemies, and have no strangers, because effectively all people are same as one. So there is no, if there's no friends, there's no enemies, there's no strangers, you're treating everyone equally.
Well, I think that we know when you think.
Do you see that as a different way to what you've presented, or it's a variation, or just a...
Well, it's kind of, I think that normally we say, may all of them abide in equanimity, free from sometimes holding some as friends, enemies, and strangers. So we normally classify people into friends, enemies, and strangers. This is my friend. That person is not my friend. This is my enemy. In a sense, I don't like that person. They create a disturbance in my mind. Or they give me problems. And the other people, people that give me neither happiness, they don't harm me, they don't create disturbance in my mind. Since they don't give me any happiness or disturbance, I have a sense of indifference to them. So when we divide people in this way, it is normally we divide them into this way from the point of view of whether they give us happiness or pain. If the person is giving me happiness, they are my friend. If they're benefiting me, they are my friend. If they're not benefiting me, if they're harming me, they are my enemy. This is a person that I dislike. But so when we speak about friends, enemies, and strangers, we speak about them, we classify them from that perspective. How are they benefiting or harming me? But then when you think of, I think, equanimity and extending an equal sense of care for others, the idea is to come to see others as being your friends, being close to your heart, rather than not classifying people. You can, I think of all of them as being your dear friends, but you see them as dear friends, not from the perspective of that person gives me happiness, so they give me something and therefore they're my friends. You think about them as like they're my friends to begin with because we have the same goals. They're my friends also from a Mahayana perspective because they've acted as my parents in my previous lives. They've acted as my brothers and sisters, and the milkman and the postman and the person that has created the clothes that I'm wearing in this life and previous life and so forth. So they might not have benefited me in this life, but they were kind to me in previous lives. So that's another thing that you can think of. And I think that on top of that, always what comes up to my mind when I think of people that do embody for me that sense of impartiality or equanimity with respect to others. When you think of, for example, His Holiness the Dalai Lama or Nama Sopa Rinpoche, then you get a sense of this is actually the way to be equanimous with respect to others. Because when you look at the way that, for example, His Holiness is meeting people, there's a sense of closeness that is immediately evidently present in the room. It's like all borders completely dissipate. Everyone is kind of hugged by that sense of closeness, as if His Holiness is meeting kind of his closest friend. So I think that that friendship that is kind of, you can see that being evidently present is that sense of close-heartedness, being able to relate to others as if this is my good friend. Not because they give me now something, not because they cause me happiness, but just because I feel a sense of closeness to that person. So in that sense, being able to hold someone as a friend is being able to feel that sense of close-heartedness to that person. We're same as wanting to be happy. We've benefited each other in different states of existence, and we will continue to benefit each other in different states of existence. And finally, actually, my happiness also depends upon that person. Even if I don't see that, it depends upon that person. If I exclude that person, I will not be able to develop final and ultimate happiness. So actually, I should be close to that person. All right, shall we leave it here for now? So just before we leave, we can just dedicate whatever we have, whatever positive thing we might have thought of today, we've spoken about or shared with. We can dedicate whatever we've developed together for the development of equanimity. May we be able to develop a greater sense of equanimity to others, to reduce a sense of holding some as close to our heart as some as distant, to classify people into friends, enemies, and strangers, and to have an equal sense of care for others. This is what we dedicate our virtue for. And with that, we can also think that we'll use that, to continue to develop bodhicitta. May the precious body mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born not decline, but increase more and more. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, Geshe Tsultrim will teach tomorrow at 10:30, continuing with the teachings on the Lamrim. And on Sunday, Geshe will start teaching. I think that actually is starting teaching from mind training like the rays of the sun. So we did speak about it a few days, and I remembered it today. I forgot to tell Shannon. I think that that's the plan. We're going to start a new text on mind training like the rays of the sun. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama is giving teachings to the FPMT organization on Monday. He's going to teach on the view of emptiness from a text that is called Recognizing My Mother. So it's going to be, I think, probably 12:30 or 1, I can't remember, but you can probably check a newsletter or just Google it and find what the teaching time is. It's going to be shown here at the Gompa, so if you're around, you're welcome to come around. Yeah, and that's about it. Thank you very much. Good night, eh?
Thank you.
Thank you.